Well, hi there, everyone. Welcome once again to Unstoppable Mindset. And today we get to have a conversation with a really interesting person. At least I find him interesting. I think you're going to as well. You're going to hear some pretty unusual things that you haven't heard on Unstoppable Mindset before, but it's always good to stretch the envelope, and that's is always fun. Jack Kountouris is our guest today. Jack was born in London, came over here to go to Wake Forest and earn his bachelor's and master's degree. He is an executive recruiter. We'll talk about that because I think there's some relevance in that, but mostly he has developed an interest, and I don't want to give it away. We'll get to it, but he's developed an interest which is incredibly fascinating, and I'm anxious to hear about it. I've never met someone who's doing some of the things that he's doing, but we'll get to that. Suspense, right? Anyway, Jack, welcome to Unstoppable Mindset. We're glad to have you here.
Hi, Michael. Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here.
So you, as you describe in your biography, are Greek American, which is kind of fun. Father from Athens, mother from, was it North Carolina?
Yeah, mother from NC, little town near the Outer Banks.
And you didn't develop a North Carolina accent, obviously.
No, I never did. I did grow up in London, so my accent's got a bit of a Britishness to it.
Well, there you go. Well, tell us a little bit about you, maybe as kind of the early Jack growing up and all that. You grew up elsewhere, so that's always fun and fascinating to learn about. So I'd love to hear about the younger Jack.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, happy to tell you. So basically, I was born in London to an American mother and a Greek dad. So living in the city, I was basically growing up there. I went there all throughout high school, primary school, secondary school, and then high school. And yeah, we would have vacations every summer. We'd go to my dad's family in Greece, and we also visit my mom's family over in NC. Yeah, so at the time of me graduating high school, I was applying to UK as well as US colleges. And because I had the whole NC connection, I mean, my brother was actually at Duke at the time. So I wanted to be more in touch with and move out there for college. So yeah, I chose Wake and absolutely loved Wake Forest there. Stayed there for my bachelor's and then my graduate degree.
What was elementary and grammar and high school like in London? How does it differ from what we experience over here, if you've had a chance to observe or learn more about that?
Oh, yeah. So it's very similar to Harry Potter in a way, or what you can imagine, I'm sure. Basically, education system, absolutely loved it. We had school uniforms, which everything was restricted in that way. But honestly, I liked having the uniforms because you didn't really have to stress about what you're going to wear every day. But yeah, absolutely love the British system, and absolutely love the friends that I made there. But actually, when it came to high school, I went to the American school in London. So that was more of an American system, international system.
Did well, of course, you did it in high school, so it may not be exactly the same, but I know I studied German in high school and learned a lot about the whole German system. And one of the things that I learned is that they really emphasized over there learning a second language, and English was one of the ones that they emphasized. Did the schools in London emphasize or encourage a second language, or is that sort of the same thing as we see here?
Yeah, actually, they strictly encourage it so much. I was doing French. I actually switched to Spanish in around high school, but from a very early age, my primary school, we actually were learning Latin, which was a fundamental language. So they really wanted to drive language learning as early as possible.
Well, and of course, we all know that learning languages earlier is probably easier and makes sense to do, which probably helps develop a broader view of the world by doing that, because I think over here we don't tend to really encourage as much. At least when I went to school, we didn't encourage as much the whole idea of necessarily learning a foreign language. We did study some Spanish, but it wasn't really something that was greatly emphasized. So it was kind of interesting. And I learned in various places in the world that in reality, it was different there than it was here.
Exactly. And me doing Latin, I think very early on, really helped me later on to develop my Spanish skills, my French, my ability to read French as well. And yeah, me just learning Latin at a very young age really helped me develop those skills.
But you didn't learn to talk Southern very well, huh?
No, not really. That's one of the things I never could do.
Could really
I
get two and
speak
two.
yeah, I speak my accent, and this is the only thing that comes out.
Yeah, well, that's okay. What did you get your college degrees in?
Yeah, so at Wake Forest, my bachelor's, my degree was in communication with minors in entrepreneurship and psychology as well.
And then master's,
And then
same?
my master's was in management.
Management. Okay. And how have you used those since leaving college? You're an executive recruiter, and I would assume that in some ways some of those skills are valuable.
Yeah, well, actually, I recently thought about it, and I think like my major and also my minors, they all come to me here in my everyday life now, because as a recruiter, I'm communicating with people of like all different characteristics all the time. And yeah, it's basically about helping people try and get the right job, and vice versa, helping the jobs trying to get the right people to work the job. So definitely it's more of a sales skill that I do use some psychology in, like learning more about them and learning what they want. So yeah, recruiting and sales, I think it's a great skill to learn how to talk to people and learn how to sell to people, realize what they want and see how you can help.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you. It is a sales skill, and it's a good sales skill. And for me, having sold most of my adult life, and I've worked with several recruiters, I appreciate the ones who really do it well, do understand sales and the psychology of selling, and the various aspects of that really make a lot of sense. So I'm excited to hear that you're doing it and that you really do view it as kind of a sales position, because I think that's absolutely correct. So it's something to definitely think about. So how has recruiting, if I might ask, and this isn't something that was in your questions, but I bet you know a lot about it, how's recruiting evolved or changed with the whole advent of the pandemic?
Yeah, so I mean, with the pandemic, it's been very cutthroat. I mean, I was lucky to be able to retain some form of a job
Mm,
during 2020 during the pandemic. Of course, I was furloughed for a bit. But yeah, things in recruiting got very cutthroat. It was a candidate-led market in a way, but also company-led in terms of not many companies were hiring, but there were lots of candidates out there who wanted to start working. Not a lot of them wanted to move, because who wants to move during pandemic? If you're
yeah,
secure in your job, then obviously like stay secure in your job in pandemic. Things got really tough. The salaries and the rebate periods, they were changed a lot, made things a bit harder. But yeah, the thing with recruiting and sales is you just gotta keep going, and eventually it's law of averages, right? So eventually,
yeah.
the longer you do it, the more the success will come.
Do you see that things are opening more or becoming a little less stressful, and that more jobs are becoming available as the pandemic, at least for the moment, dies down?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, I would say the pandemic, 2020, obviously the pandemic hit and lots of people lost their jobs. 2021 and perhaps 2022, people were still recovering. You could tell that some companies were in the process of reinvigoration, and they were growing the workforces again. But now in 2023, most companies are starting to turn and starting to do that rebuild.
Yeah, it's going to be a challenge for a while. I sincerely hope that we don't see some other form of the virus come along that we can't deal with, so that we go back to place where we were in 2020 and 2021. I know I attended the National Federation of the Blind National Convention in Las Vegas in 2019. But then by the time July came in 2020, when we would normally have a convention, of course, everything was locked down. So there was a virtual convention in 2020 and in 2021. In 2022, it opened a little bit more. So there was a hybrid kind of convention. I didn't go again. My wife was not doing really well. She also had rheumatoid arthritis, which meant that the whole autoimmune system wasn't as robust as it really needed to be. So I didn't want to put her in danger by going to the convention. And a lot of people actually did get COVID last year at the convention. I went this year. I didn't really hear a lot about many people. Actually, I didn't hear about anyone who was confined to the room because they caught COVID at the convention, which I thought was good. But I think at the same time, we do need to be pretty cautious about it all.
Very cautious. I mean, who wants another variant to just come out of nowhere?
Yeah, and the problem is that it can if some strange thing occurs. So we'll see. But I'm really happy and excited to hear that things are starting to open, and it makes your job a little bit easier because not only do you have candidates, but you have places to start to put them, which is, of course, what you want to do.
Yes, of course.
So at the same time, however, when you were at Wake Forest, you developed an interest in something else. We sort of alluded to it without talking about it.
Yeah.
No, I won't call it the elephant in the room. It's the fun thing in the room. But why don't you, tell us a little bit about how you got into it and what it's all about?
Yeah, the fun elephant in the room. Yeah, happy to talk about it, obviously. Well, so me and my friend in business school, we loved playing board games a lot, and eventually we were like playing board games, and we were thinking about, okay, how can we make this board game different? How can we make our own spin and put it on this board game? And yeah, so eventually we were developing a new game, and then after graduation, of course, that was when COVID was at its height. So we were all just indoors. We had to no social life, so just being in the room all the time. So yeah, we took it amongst ourselves to just use that free time, that surplus of free time we had, to just develop the board game and actually make a product, make a business, and get it out there.
So tell us about the business and what you have so far.
Of course. Well, so the business we have is called Dimension Board Games. Our first board game, Invasion: The Conquest of Kings, was actually released last May, and we have around like hundreds of customers right now, primarily nationwide, but some in the UK and some as well in Europe. But yeah, we still have that one game that's going strong. Sales are going strong from that, but we also have a couple others in development. Of course, it's still very early on for these, but a couple other games, a couple of expansions that we have in plans for the next couple of years.
Given the world of technology and so on, why board games as opposed to maybe creating an electronic game?
Yeah, so actually this ties into what we're talking about the pandemic. Because most people are just stuck inside, we actually read so many articles about how board games were bringing people together, how board games offered something that you couldn't really get like virtually. And if you were to stay indoors, that's when board games became lots of popular. I mean, it was a way to hang out with your friends, hang out with family without really having to go outside. So yeah, we actually saw in articles there actually a spike in board games during the pandemic. And also earlier, we noticed that board games was a huge market. I mean, there were particular niches around combat strategy board games, around cooperative board games. And yeah, there was a huge market to take opportunity of.
So you created a game, and so it got published sort of more when the pandemic was slowing down, but you're seeing still pretty good sales of it and so on?
Yeah, still pretty good. We're going to a few conventions. We're upping our social media, so in Instagram followership and content out there. But yeah, primarily conventions we're doing. We're still seeing that interest. We've gotten a couple of reviews from Board Game Geek reviewers and from just board game people that have it. So yeah, we're seeing some success out there. We definitely have a game that people people really tend to enjoy, and actually when you know you have the product that people like, I mean that's good to get going with that.
What kind of comments are you getting about Invaders?
Yes, so we're getting good reviews. I mean we're getting some area of critiques. Obviously it was just me and my friend, so prior to that we have no board game experience in development, and we didn't really use Kickstarter. And most board games that are becoming new use Kickstarter. That's where they get the word of mouth. So us not using Kickstarter and choosing to self-publish, that was already, in our opinion, a big hurdle that we had to accomplish. But yeah, once we got the reviews coming in, we actually got good insight. People who had reviewed like combat strategy games before, they talked about our resource management, they talked about our combat system. There was actually one review we got, and the only downside of it was the size of a box. So yeah, people generally seem to get and seem to like our game. But
One of
on the flip side of that, obviously, there were some mistakes we made, like little mistakes in like the rule book and all that. And that just comes from us not having the experience of writing rule books, of doing design, of doing art for the box. So yeah, definitely areas to improve and stuff to learn from for our next few games.
So, what did you learn about what you did and what did you do wrong as far as creating the rules, and what will you do differently next time?
Yeah, so what we did is we did like a primary rule book. Uh, but yeah, what some people have been saying is we need more of like a reference guide. So what our rule book did is it did a good job on explaining the nuts and bolts of the rules, but it didn't like provide reference that you could
Hmm.
use during the game. And that's what it's all about, because when you haven't developed the game and you start a game from scratch, it's like you need to go to the rule book every other turn to
Yeah,
remember, just for reference for the rules.
until you get used to it.
Exactly. So adoption, that's the thing we've been working on a lot.
So, the next time, do you think you would use Kickstarter? Do you think, give you any advantages that you didn't get to utilize in developing the first game?
Yeah, so primarily the advantage of Kickstarter that we missed out on was just the word of mouth, because Board Game Geek, that's where the whole community of board gamers, and particularly our target market demographic, is. And they advertise Kickstarters a lot. So they would have games like people don't even play and people just see on Kickstarter, feeling like it's interesting. And that's where you get the word of mouth. That's where you get investment as well. So I think for next few games, we will definitely think about Kickstarter, because obviously when you have a product like this, as opposed to a service, that means word of mouth is really everything. You need to do everything you can to sell that product in
And
so
in
many platforms.
and in a sense, you get to generate some revenue up front, which also helps you start to see how much interest there might be in the game.
Exactly, yes. And yeah, that money aspect of it, it's definitely a major factor. Yeah, if there's investment in the original Kickstarter, that means okay, we've got something. Then that gives us so much confidence. So yeah, I think definitely that's the primary thing we have learned from self-publishing, so we can progress in the future.
Has anyone yet or any company approached you to talk about, gee, maybe we should buy this and make it a bigger thing? Or have you gotten to that kind of point yet?
No, yeah, we're not at
We're
that
not
point
there yet.
yet.
Yeah.
I mean, we have talked to like retailers, brick and mortars, but no like really serious conversations yet. But yeah, who knows? Eventually, something like that might happen.
Have you looked at major resale or sales places where you can get them to pick up the game and sell it?
Of course, and many of the conventions actually we've done have been taking place at board game stores. We have one influencer actually who her son runs a board game store. So when we had him review our game, he actually displayed the game in his board game store. So a lot of customers could come up. So yeah, board game stores, cafes, board game cafes like that, and conventions, anywhere we can display the game really, so people, the public, can go buy it and say, "Hey, that's a game I don't know about. Let's learn
Yeah.
more about it."
And again, the name of the game is
Invasion: The Conquest of Kings.
The Conquest of Kings, which is intriguing in of itself, which is great. I know that in terms of doing something like this, there had to be a lot of logistics, a lot of coordination. So you and your friend, I gather, both went to Wake Forest.
Yes, in our master's program, we both did the master's in management program at Wake.
Cool. And so what really got you to decide that you wanted to start a company? Because that's a pretty major decision. And I appreciate that you two were in an environment where certainly doing something like this could be encouraged, but what made you decide to really knuckle down and go through the rigors of starting a company?
Yeah, so I remember in your earlier question, I talked about my communication and how I use the psychology minor I had, but also this is where that entrepreneurship minor I had came in. I did so much at Wake Forest in terms of entrepreneurship. I kind of like really knew that at some point there would be some product or some service that I would just take and run with. And honestly, I didn't really know it would be a board game until the opportunity came along. I mean, I really wasn't a board gamer before I met my friend from the business school. So yeah, I think the opportunity arose because we were in business school. We had that atmosphere of like learning and acquiring something better, and we had the business acumen as well that we were being taught every day. And yeah, we had the passion as well. So if you take the passion and combine it with business, it really makes for a good environment and good atmosphere to actually take something you love and run with it in a sense that you can actually make it something.
What's the name of your company?
It's Dimension Board Games.
That's right, Dimension Board Games. So people go look for Dimension Board Games and buy Invasion, The Conquest of Kings. But anyway, that's another story. We'll leave that for people to do. But I go back to the question about electronic versions of games. One of the things that I've noticed, and even in some games that are accessible for blind people, one of the things that I see with electronic games is you can buy more things or buy tokens or pay to get more resources and so on. Does any of that kind of thing exist in the board game world, or is that something that you think is really necessary to focus on that would give you some additional revenue?
Yeah, of course. So we have thought about certain add-ons like that. Maybe you can add like more pieces, add things to establish other abilities in the game. And we have definitely thought about that in the long run, but right now we just want to keep at the physical board game. Eventually, when we get popular, I mean, it's not if, it's when we get popular, when we have a follower base, when we have those many people playing our game, we will think about introducing something like that where people can really be on the lookout for add-ons, for extra abilities and all that for the game. But yeah, right now we just have a main focus on just word of mouth and getting our games out there.
So what was it like starting a company with a friend? I mean, it was an adventure, and I regard life as an adventure. So clearly you all, the two of you, started on a great adventure. And You've stuck with it, and that doesn't always happen either. So you guys obviously get along well.
Yeah, we do. I mean, it was really fun working with one of my best friends, and still really is fun to work with one of my best friends. Right now, we still do play tests. We still talk about the business. We still talk about new games we will have in production. But yeah, it was great. Not just to have a friend as a partner, but to have a partner in general. It means that you're not really alone in a vision that you have. When you have someone else who's working on the same thing, it makes you not have those anxieties and have that belief. Okay, I believe it. There's also someone else who believes it, so it makes you have more confidence in what you're wanting to do. And yeah, obviously working with one of my best friends, it was fantastic. And we had like similar personalities as well, so we can always like talk off of each other and always build on each other. And yeah, it was absolutely fantastic.
So where does your friend live?
He actually moved out to Denver, Colorado after
Ah,
graduation from Wake.
and what got you to Los Angeles?
Well, after my graduation from Wake, I actually went back to London for a little bit. I worked in London as a recruiter. I started my recruitment career. And then eventually, this past year, just over 1 year now, 1 year ago now, one of my companies in London, they were opening a new LA office. So I was still young enough to take that opportunity. I'd always thought about maybe trying out the West Coast, trying out LA. So yeah, I basically my boss was moving a few of us to start over that office in LA, and I was one of the ones he chose. So we started the LA office, and that's how I moved.
And so, in a sense, it isn't as challenging from a time zone standpoint as it might be because you're only an hour difference. Um,
Yeah,
so
now
it's
now it's
easier.
it's really not. As you can imagine, when I was in London and my friend was in Denver, we
Yeah.
had a 7 hour gap,
Yeah.
and that was hard to do. But now it's much better with us only being 1 hour apart. So whenever I want to talk about a new game idea or talk about a new marketing strategy, I can just call him and we can say, oh, let's schedule a time to call each other.
Do you do that on the phone or on Zoom, or how do you generally chat?
When it generally it's Zoom.
Because you
When
can have
it's a
video
quick thing,
easily.
it's just maybe an idea. We'll do a phone call, but generally it has been Zoom, so we can really like brainstorm every little idea we have, make sure we're doing well with it.
Yeah, and you can see each other, which make a lot of sense.
Exactly, exactly.
So, what kind of challenges, though, do you face since you have a full time job? And we appreciate, I gather you're probably taking some time from your full time job to be here this afternoon since it's only about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But what kind of challenges do you face and issues do you have to encounter when you've got a full time job, yet you're trying to run a company, which can also probably be somewhat of a full time job as well?
Yeah, definitely. It's a struggle taking the time, and especially since I moved so recently. So when I just moved to LA, and this was like last summer, it was tough to get going. To know I had the job confidence, but know also that we had to keep the board game business going. So it took a lot of like strict, regimented scheduling, and just I've a list like right by me on my wall of everyday things I need to do after work, things I need to check off after work every day. So yeah, you just need to be strict and regimented about it. And honestly, like it was tough starting it up, tough when I had the change, but when I when I applied myself and got in the habit of it, it really didn't become as time consuming.
So Dimension board game started in what, 2022 was it?
Started in 2021
In
actually, but
2021.
Invasion was released in 2022.
Right. But
Yeah.
in 2021 you were still over in London?
2021, I was still over in London. My friend was in Denver, and that's when that's when predominantly most of the game development and operations stuff happened.
So that
But
was
yeah,
a real
the game was
challenge.
typically released in May of last year.
So that was a real challenge, though, because then you did have the time zone issues of being 7 hours apart. That must have been fun.
Yeah, that was really fun, and I'm sure you know this, but because Denver 7 hours, the
Yeah.
time difference basically meant that because I had a full-time job on weekdays, we can do everything because when I came back from work, he was at work, and vice versa. And when he came back from work, I was asleep. So that basically meant Saturdays, Sundays, and Friday nights were the most optimal time to have those Zoom meetings. But yeah, again, this was when we were just regrouping from the pandemic, so our social lives were still trying to get back there. So it was easier to manage these communications.
Yeah, certainly is easier now. Now, do you have a family, a wife, or anything?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Yeah, I have a life. My
Are you
brother.
married or anything like that?
No, I'm not married
So
yet.
so you still
Um,
have more of your own time than if you had a wife and a family that you'd have to deal with. So that probably helps a little bit too.
Exactly. That did help. Yeah. For me, like family was just my parents, my brother, my sister-in-law, my granddad, my grandmom. Um, yeah, no girlfriend yet.
No girlfriend yet. Someday, but
It'll happen.
it'll happen. I know for me, my wife passed away last November, and my time became more my own. So working with Accessibi, which is in Israel, 10 hours ahead, sometimes we get meetings very early in the morning, my time, because they're 10 hours ahead. So,
Oh
for
wow.
example, yesterday on Sunday, I had a meeting at 7 in the morning. Sunday, this just yesterday, and it's easier to do when I know I don't have to worry about disturbing somebody else. Just waking up a dog and a cat, and they cope. But with the family, when we were married for 40 years, it was always a thought of working in one place, and oftentimes I would be on one coast and company would be on the other coast, and I was transferred to various places to do things for companies. And that happened through the World Trade Center. And of course, being in the World Trade Center on September 11th. And then it wasn't such an issue because although I did for a while before September 11th work for companies when I was in New York and they were in California, afterward it was much more an issue where we were able to deal with stuff a lot closer. So I worked in California, in Northern California, for Guide Dogs for the Blind for a while, but we lived there. And then afterward, it was just me running my own business, the Michael Hinkson Group. So we didn't have to really be so challenged by different time zones until Accessibi came along, which they did in January of 2021. So for 2 years, it was a little bit of an issue, or almost 2 years. But, there is something to be said for your own time. And so you can really do things on your schedule. And you do have a friend you have to work with, but still, you guys are obviously working it out.
Yeah, we're trying. It's a struggle sometimes, but it's really great working with one of my best friends, and it's really great doing something that you love. And when you're in the business of fun and games, it's really hard to separate the fun from the business.
Well, and hopefully the business becomes fun.
Yep, it's starting to be like we're seeing the success coming, and that's fantastic for us to know.
That is exciting. It's a great thing to be able to do. So, what are you learning from your first game, and as you go into future games, what are you learning about game development? There's a lot that obviously has to go into it. So, what makes a perfect game, and how do you get there?
Oh yeah, so much stuff that goes into it. So many mistakes we've learned from. But yeah, in game development specifically, it's a lot of trial and error, a lot of looking out for loopholes, and really gets tedious sometimes. But yeah, to give you a little bit of perspective, one of the ways that me and my friend work so much together is he has So he is the knack for thinking big and a knack for thinking of the big stuff, thinking of the big ideas, just starting like out wide. And I have the knack of like bringing him in. So having the small ideas. So what I do generally is find the loopholes. So what he would do is he'd say, "Okay, Jack, I got an amazing idea," and then we'd be brainstorming a lot, and we'd be thinking about how to make that idea accessible in the game, make that idea work out so it's not too much in gameplay, not too much to understand, but it can work out in the game, in the physical game when there aren't too many loopholes to take advantage of.
So do you get to the point as you're developing the game where you actually, the two of you, just spend time playing the game to look for the loopholes or the things that are working and are not working?
Yeah, actually, that's predominantly what it's all about. So I would say that there's one stage, and we're just thinking ideas, getting ideas from all over the place, and then we enter another stage where we take all those ideas and like maybe one by one or two by two. So we make sure that no ideas like convoluted with each other. We will test them out, and we will see how it works in the game and see if there's a way to make it simpler. Because one of the things that we were noting in game development was there's a time where our game was super complicated and super long as well. This was very early on, so when we were really just out of ideation, really. So there was a point that every playtest we made, we developed like little nuances to make the game simpler and make the game shorter.
Mm. How long does it take to play the game now? If someone sits down, or some people, how many people can play it at one time on a board?
So yeah, the base game is 3 to 4, but it can be played with 5 as well as 6 too. But yeah, base game is 3 to 4 players. Can be played with 2 players as well, but it really hits a smooth point where it's 3, 4, 5 players.
How long does it take to play a complete game?
Here's the thing, it really depends actually. Our game is military combat, so it depends what the characteristics of the players. So if there are 4 players playing who are really outright combat and really aggressive from the beginning, it's a shorter game.
Somebody gets killed off soon.
Yeah, of course, and that's happened a lot of times. And yeah, on the flip side, if there's a game with 4 people who like really like to build up their kingdoms before they fight and really want to be cautious about fighting, then you have the longer games. Usually average is about 2 hours, maybe 2.5 if it's your first time trying to figure out the rule book.
That's not too bad. It's an evening's entertainment.
Exactly. And some games out there, some games I love out there, I love them, but they're 7 hours, 8 hours. It's insane sometimes.
Yeah, I like Monopoly, and Monopoly you can do fairly quickly in a couple of hours and have a lot of fun with it. But the world has advanced a lot since Atlantic City and Boardwalk and Park Place.
Yeah.
So what's the basic premise, or what's the process of the game? Can you tell us a little bit about the plot and so on?
Yeah, so the basic premise of the game is you have your medieval kingdom. So you have a kingdom with castles and with roads, castle walls between castles. So you try to build that up, and the way the map is, you have the resources, and the resources are inherently in the map. So the placement of your castles and where you build your castle, where you build your roads, they get you those resources, and really they really help develop, okay, who you'll be as an empire, what kind of resources you're getting. And then the next side, which is the combat aspect of it, is you have a king, and also you have soldiers who kind of follow the king. And the aim of the game is to be able to take other kings' crowns. And the way you do that is you use the soldiers going along with the king to create armies and all that, try to siege people's castles and try to kill people's kings, kill people's armies. So yeah, there are really two parts of the game. The first half of it, or should I say, first third of it, is just building up your kingdom, trying to manage your resources you're getting, and then the next two thirds you're getting into sieging castles, getting castles, and getting into actual combat, which is fantastic. It's a fantastic part of the game.
So all kings, no women?
Yeah, so that's the thing. We did think about doing like a queen piece and maybe for one of the expansions, but because we just wanted one overarching piece to be like the most important thing, we were like between names, and then we were thinking like king. King seemed so perfect. We were thinking about that as a downside is maybe not not gender equal, but yeah, we were thinking about games like chess, where obviously the king is the main piece that you have to take to win the game. So we're like, okay, it's medieval. People understand that the king is the main piece. So yeah, we
At,
came with that name.
at the same time, in chess, the queen is probably the most powerful piece on the
Queen is
board.
most powerful, yeah. So
Well, so the real question is, the very serious question is, who wins most of the games, you or your friend?
I can say quite confidently I do.
There you go.
And actually, it was funny in the very beginning. He was having such a hard time with the game. In the very beginning, there was such a disparity between me and him. But yeah, occasionally like he got good, and now we're like really equal at the game. So yeah, I won't answer who wins between me and him, but between me, him, and two other friends, it's usually either me or him who win.
There you go. Well, the other part about it is though, you each bring, it sounds like, different skills to the company and different skills to the game design, which is great because you feed off each other.
Exactly, we feed off each other, and it's amazing. Like personally and professionally, and in the games, we feed off each other. And whenever he thinks of an idea, it's like I think of the idea at the same time. We're like easily able to like connect and really. So he says, "Oh, I have this idea," and then I listen and say, "Oh, what if?" And he's like, "Oh, I was just thinking of that," and it's just great to because once we start that train, it's like our brains are we start in different locations, but we just come together with the days we're having, and it's fantastic to be able to brainstorm like that.
Yeah. And it's always great when you have somebody who can really work with you that well. You guys were very fortunate that you found each other and are able to put all of this together.
Exactly. Yes, and it's
So
fantastic.
in the whole process of constructing the game, where's the game actually manufactured these days?
So the game was originally manufactured in China. I mean, we were looking into local manufacturers, but honestly, for the money purposes, China was the best. So the way we have it worked is we had the units manufactured in China, and then we store them in different fulfillment centers. One on the west coast and one near the east coast as well, so we can easily be able to distribute to our customers.
What I was wondering, and the reason I asked the question is, what kind of effect did the pandemic have for you in terms of supply chains and all that? And especially since you came in as far as having a game on the market closer to the end of the pandemic, but still we keep hearing about supply chain problems and all that. So how's that affected you and how have you dealt with it?
Of course, and like I'd say, even though our game was actually released like towards the end of the pandemic, we are in the midst of we are in the midst of development, and they were in the midst of production all throughout 2021 and even 2020. Yeah, so supply chains were huge problem, especially having it shipped from China. Huge shipping delays, and it was tough to really work it out. So initially, we actually opened pre-orders for the game, in November of 2021 just to get the holiday customers.
Hmm.
But yeah, because of the supply chains and because of the problems with production overseas and delays, it wasn't until May, and this is late May, that it was actually produced and it was actually available. So unfortunately, we had some customers who had pre-ordered the game for the holidays in December and only were able to get the game in May. But yeah, it really was tough to work out.
How about now? Are more of the supply chain issues and so on less of a problem?
So you know, it's less of that problem, but it's a different problem really. It's because obviously like political situations and all that, it's it's still a problem like getting the shipping on time, huge delays, price increases as well with manufacturers. But yeah, it's a different problem than the pandemic was. So everything that was lingering from the pandemic, in supply chains, I think that's become minimalized.
But things seem to be going along pretty well right now, though, overall.
As well as it can be. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you see it improving, though, over time, or is it just kind of a steady state of challenges of one sort or another, but you're able to cope with them?
Yeah, I think the latter. Honestly, study challenges. I mean, we're aware of the problems. We manufactured our first game in China. But yeah, honestly, like stuff has made us wonder. The second or maybe third is we'll try to manufacture them locally because yeah, China, that was obviously when we were scrounging for money and when we were looking for investment, and the price in China was easy to manufacture, but just to optimize shipping and optimize time and all that, we might be looking for affordable options that are local to the states and in the country to help speed things up
Uh
later.
huh. Uh huh. How much does the game cost if one wants to buy it?
Yeah, so the game goes for market rate of $59.99.
Okay.
We do have continual seasonal discounts going on. So we had a
Sure.
holiday discount for I think 30%. We had another 20% discount at some point earlier this year. So yeah, we do run discounts every now and then on our Instagram channels and then Facebook platforms.
Well, is it a game that's also available on places like Amazon, which is obviously a big selling potential place?
No, it is not.
Not
Unfortunately,
at this point.
now
Yeah.
all we're doing is like e-commerce at the moment
Yeah.
to start because we're still in that stage where we're just getting that word of mouth and just getting the start. But
Yeah.
yeah, we have looked at Amazon fulfillment and Amazon FBA and so many hurdles to jump through. It's a plan, but it's a plan for the future.
What did you do to stand out? Clearly, there are a lot of board games. There are a lot of demands that are being put on people's attentions and so on. What did you do to stand out to get people to pay attention to Invasion?
Amazing. Yeah, that's a very good question. So that was I talked about how we didn't do Kickstarter, how we didn't really have the word of mouth. So that was already like we were starting with a we were starting like 15 feet back from the starting line there. And it was really tough to get the word of mouth. But yeah, I think the main stuff for us is we'd have influencers, we have reviewers, we got on Board Games Geek, we have people that we asked to review the game. Obviously, in the beginning, the word of mouth came from like friends and family. But yeah, it's one of those things, and we have the conventions as well. But yeah, it's one of those things that you need to slow and steady wins the race, right? You need
Yeah.
to begin from like nothing, and you need to slowly build it up like an Instagram post a day in the very beginning. It really wasn't doing much, but now it's really getting more traction as we have more followership, and now we have more reviews on Board Games Geek. It's more reputable and more credible for people in the board games community, and yeah, so it's really much slow and steady wins the race.
You said something earlier that you didn't do anything with Kickstarter and this and so on. You self-published, which I appreciate. But what comes to mind is that what you are doing and what is being done is regarding your game very much like what goes into typical publishing, especially if you're doing self-publishing. You got to do all the marketing, you've got to do all the demand creation and so on. And so I'm hearing from you the same things that I hear from a lot of people. We did with my second book that we self-published, but even our first book, you have to be involved in the marketing of it. And you're going to always be the best salespeople for the game.
Yeah, of course. And me, again, being a recruiter as my job, my day job, it really brings out this salesperson in me, and I'm selling something I love, so I speak to the credibility of it. But yeah, Kickstarter, when you take it that way, it's pretty much a marketing platform. So we just had to do that without the board game community behind us. So that was the hurdle for us.
How large is the board game community? I mean, you've indicated that board games are still very popular, but how large is it compared to like electronic games and so on, or is it just a completely different world? So it doesn't really give you the ability to compare the two.
So it is a different world. You can't really make a direct comparison from the two, but it's a large community. I mean, if you go on Board Games Geek, Gaming Caravan, all the communities out there on Discord and such. There's so many board games, so many niche board games, and especially like indie board games, indie board game creators. So many people just create board games just like that and get board games out there so often.
Yeah.
It's really like an enriched community. There's so much out there. So many niches of board games, resource management, combat, cooperative, competitive. It's really a huge community.
Yeah. And so the more you can do to break in and come up with plots that are going to intrigue people, the better it is.
Exactly. You just need to have the game ideas and give them to people.
We talked before this podcast, last time we met, about making it accessible. And I would love to explore how and if it would be doable to make the game accessible so blind people could play it. And there are some people that do some things in making card games and other games accessible. So it's something to explore. Not sure that it would be a huge market as such, but it would be great if when in the future you produce games, you could make them accessible right from the outset. So you have one game that everyone can play, whether they can see the board or feel the board, and that you just have the same game that's available for both. And I still think that that's the best way to deal with accessibility, rather than having a different product for, say, people who are blind as opposed to people who are not. It's a unique sort of thing, but it would make for a very interesting discussion point and dialogue.
Oh yeah, exactly. I mean, different things we can do. Obviously, we have that rule book, and if we can transfer it to Braille, and it really becomes in our game. Like, I'm gonna make the comparison to chess.
Mm-hmm.
You know that there are some people who know chess so much they can picture a board in their heads. They can picture it, and they can just make them move in their heads because they remember where everything is. It really becomes a lot like that. So maybe eventually people can really feel the mat, feel the game board to know where everything is, and at that point just know what move to make based on the map. Because honestly, there is a very simple way with the resources to make the map able to make the map accessible, with you just feeling what kind of resources are where.
Something to explore. Well, if you'd like to explore that and examine it in the future, let me know, because I think it would be fun to try to connect you with people who might be able to help with that. For you, what have you learned from this experience so far in terms of creating a business? What kind of mistakes have you made in doing the business, or what kind of lessons have you learned that are going to help you as you go forward?
Yeah, so Well, one lesson I have is it's to really have like a partner that you trust, and just in general have a partner. I spoke to this earlier, but I'll speak to it again. There's so much confidence when you know there's at least one other person who has the same vision and believes in the same thing you do. It just really helps so much to avoid this anxiety saying, oh, what if no one likes it? Oh, what if I can't do this? But yeah, other than that, just, and yeah, you've probably heard this from the perspectives of business people out there, but many entrepreneurs, just the famous thing is they say many people just fail at their first ventures. We have we have made a few mistakes which we will definitely learn from, which actually costed us money. So we learned the hard way. But I think honestly, being an entrepreneur, having a business like this, learning the hard way is, it really goes with the function of it.
What has all of this taught you that you can use in your full-time regular job of being a recruiter? Because I'm sure that this must give you some empathy or better understanding of some of the things or some of the places where you might be sending people, I would think.
Of course. Yeah. So in recruitment, what I will say is sometimes you see people with CVs, and it's really black and white. Sometimes the hiring manager, you see people with CVs, you see they're doing this passion project on the side, you see what they're doing on the side, and many people will be like, okay, what's the relevance in that? Because obviously, if you're doing something on the side, it's not really a full-time job. But yeah, it's given me a chance to have more patience and learn more about the individual people, not just about what they've been doing, how long they've been doing, and what they've accomplished, which obviously is the name of the game in terms of recruitment, but learn more about them on the people side of things, learn more about what drives them, and learn more about their motivations.
Studying psychology is a wonderful thing, but there's nothing like living it and seeing it in action to really be a great tool for you teaching yourself how to do it better.
Yep, that's exactly right, Michael.
it's and it's as good as it gets, and it's kind of fun. What's the future for Dimension board games then? So you're obviously working on games. Anything you can talk about?
Yeah, a few things I can talk about. I don't want to talk too much because it's still pretty much in development. But we do have a few expansions maybe coming, another edition possibly for like the next 2 years, so 23, 24, 25. And eventually we'd want to be in a place that we can just come up with different games and be able to really just create the games we love and see if they're good enough.
Do you think
So
your games will continue to be sort of battle and conquest type games, or are there other kinds of plots you might explore?
what I will say is the ones we are thinking now in the background and the ones in development, they are a combat, they
Uh-huh.
are strategy, they are similar to the first game, but we are thinking about one that sets more in a space mindset, which
Hmm.
is more of a 2025 thing. We haven't really begun development on that so much because we've just been focusing on invasion and the expansions and the other ones we have more immediately. But yeah, the long term goal is to be thinking of games in other situations, so space and stuff like that.
Conquest and strategy games, though, are pretty popular, and so I'm not surprised.
Exactly. And if we have a chance to create a classic game like Monopoly or Scrabble that's more mainstream, then that would be fantastic as well.
Well, this has absolutely been fun. And as I said, I've never been able to have a discussion like this, and I've learned a lot. And you've also given us some wonderful things to think about, just good life lessons about entrepreneurship and the fact that when you work on something, you have to deal with setbacks, but at the same time, you need to look forward and move forward. And you've clearly done that. You and your partner have done a lot of that, which is really exciting. And I appreciate the the lessons and the thoughts that you've brought to us. If people want to learn more about Invasion and learn more about you and so on, how do they do that?
So yeah, I'm obviously, you can look me up on LinkedIn, Jack Kountouris, or on Facebook or any of these socials. But for Dimension Board Games, our Instagram handle is at Dimension Board Games. Our URL is dimensionboardgames.com. Very simple like that. And also we have a link to Board Games Geek on our website, so you can see the more in-depth reviews of the game on the Invasion and the Conquest of Kings on Board Games Geek. So if you're looking for reviews of the game, just go to Board Games Geek, or even go to our Instagram page, because sometimes we do post some reviews out there.
Spell your name so people can find you easily if they want to go to
Sure.
LinkedIn and so on.
JACK KOUNTOURIS.
So hunt down Jack and learn about Invasion, the Conquest of Kings, and Dimension Board Games. And it sounds like there's a lot of exciting stuff coming up. And I'm going to try to keep up with it. And I'm hoping that we can maybe work together to make something accessible. I think that we don't, as blind people, get to share a lot of that stuff. And sometimes a few games are made somewhat accessible, or sometimes they're made fairly accessible, but it's still a small population compared to what's out there. So it would be fun to see some games come out right from the outset that work for everyone.
Of course. Thanks so much, Michael.
Well, I really appreciate it. And I appreciate you listening to us out there, or watching us if you're doing it on YouTube. We really would love your comments. Please feel free to send me any comments and thoughts and emails you have. You can reach me at Michael, HIMICHAELHI, at Accessibe, ACCESSIBE.com, or go to our podcast page, www.michaelhingson.com/podcast. And Michael Hingson is MICHAELHINGSON.com/podcast. Please give us a 5-star rating. We appreciate your ratings. We appreciate your reviews. And please not only rate, but give us reviews. We love that. And I'm sure that Jack would love it if you say nice, wonderful things about this when you hear it, because that'll help what he's doing as well. And we very much admire what you're doing. So I want to thank you one more time for being here and taking your time to come and talk to us about the game and what you're doing.
Happy to be here. Thanks so much, Michael, and thanks to everyone for listening.